Hi, and welcome to RBP on JSB. I'm violinist Rachel Barton Pine, and today we're going to be talking about the second movement of Bach's Sonata No. 2 in A minor, the Fuga. If you want to hear about some of the issues that pertain to all of the Bach Sonatas and Partitas, please be sure to check out the overview episode. So this fugue has the same exact length of subject as the first fugue, the one from the Sonata in G minor. Interestingly, this one is in 2/4, the other one was in 4/4. It's not only the same number of beats, it's also the same number of notes, though in a different rhythmic pattern. And this one is... It's such a longer, more complex movement. What he does with this fugue subject is more varied. He puts it upside down instead of just... He also goes... So every note that goes up goes down, every note that goes down goes up. So it's the upside down subject. And then he also has a counter subject, which is a little chromatic line. This four-quarter note chromatic thing that goes, back and forth with the fugue theme. And also that one gets inverted upside down. So there's a lot going on here, and of course interlude sections and the whole 9 yards. It's not nearly as long as the longest fugue yet, which is the C major fugue from the third sonata, but yet somehow or another I find the third fugue to be much more easy to memorize. Okay, easy's the wrong word, it's a big beast, but if you know what all those nasty four-note chords are and all of that, at least it's in distinct sections. This one is just one long thing that goes on and on and on and on, and if you take a wrong turn you could end up accidentally cutting out half the movement or circling back and doing a page you've already played. It's really dangerous for memorization. And so one of the things that you can do to help yourself is to drill all of the cadences and sections. So, measure 45 is your first, measure 18, of course, is a cadence, but we're going to talk about measure 45 first because it's A minor, the home key. Right? You've got a major key cadence at 103. Another major key cadence, G major this time, at 166. And then, let's see what else. We've got an unresolved kind of a thing that I think is a point to note at 221. It's not a cadence, but then it kind of goes back to an entrance of the subject. So it's just something we should be aware of. Another D minor cadence at 232. And of course the final A minor cadence, which doesn't have an octave, unlike most of these other final notes of cadences. Just a prime there at 280. So those are some of them. Now, I didn't go completely in order. I left off a few because now I want to talk about the batch of cadences that end with an E octave, because there are 4 of them. So knowing which is really important. So the first one at measure 18. So that's actually not a cadence. It's just an unresolved, like E major. That's sort of the 5 of the A minor. But I'm mentioning it because it is that E octave. Now the next time we have it, it is a honest to goodness E minor cadence, and that is 73. Then we have another one in 137. And yet another one in 188. Now the thing to think about is what happens after each of them. First time, second time, it's sort of similar. Next one, the next one. Okay, so knowing when you get to an E octave, okay, which one is it? Where are you? What's going on? There are also some places where you can get confused just because there's a little bit of notes that happens on the A and E strings that happens later on the D and A strings, even if it's not even in a related section. It's like a little turn of phrase that's similar enough that you could get yourself mixed up. I'm not going to tell you the answers of where all of those are, because I think actually finding them is part of the process towards drilling the memory. So if I gave you the answer, I would be eliminating that for you, which wouldn't be good for you. But what you should do is look and see if you can just find some of them. And if you don't find them, the way you might find them is by making a mistake when you perform it. So you don't want to make a mistake in a big concert, and getting yourself to that point, record yourself. Sometimes just that little bit of adrenaline of knowing that you're, that you've got your recording device on and you're not going to stop no matter what. You're going to play it from beginning to end and see what happens. That can cause enough adrenaline that you can make little mistakes, and that's good. You want to make mistakes, because I guarantee you in this movement you are going to make mistakes, and the question is, where are they going to be? What are your weak spots? So you want to find them. So hope that you make mistakes so you can identify where they are. And then work on them and know, okay, this is this moment, this is this moment, and have a roadmap where you know what key it is in when, and where it goes back to the fugue subject and where it veers off into a section with that chromatic counter subject, and just kind of have your general roadmap of structure and know your little tricky spots. After you've recorded yourself and listened back a number of times, don't just rely on a couple of studio classes before the big audition or the performance or something. Do more than that. Get a couple of friends, get a couple of different friends, play for an old people's home, just whatever you can do to just play it again and again and again in front of people, and find all the possible places you might mess up. And then you still might mess up in the real concert, but at least you probably will be able to get back on track, because you'll know the structure well enough that you'll be able to identify how you messed up, and maybe you end up playing a whole page you already played, or maybe you end up skipping a page, but actually some of your audience might not even notice, so don't worry about it. So memorizing this movement is a big, huge challenge, but before you can even get to that point, of course, you have to be able to play the notes at all. Multiple voices, as always, should be practiced separately. So you're going to play, and then also, and just feel each voice independently and then put them back together. And then as you're playing them put back together, one time play that little spot and listen for the upper voice to make sure it sounds good. Next time, listen to your lower voice quarters and make sure that they're all satisfactory. Don't try to listen to both at once, because then you won't be able to take 100% of your attention to either. Listen to one separately and don't listen to the other, and listen to the other and don't listen to the first one, and then listen to both only after that. So play them separately, play them both, but listen to them separately, and then play them together. And if you really want to go, go for broke, actually there's a great series called Bach for Two, BACHFOR numeral 2, which has the 3 fugues made into violin duets, and it's a great way to play it through with a friend. It's amazing how much easier it is when you only have half the notes, but it's just an opportunity to really hear stuff clearly that you somehow don't when you're trying to play everything all at the same time. So I'm really glad that those exist. Bach for Two, you can find it online. So one of the things with this fugue is that usually there's not a lot of held notes. So, when they're quarters, they're really played as quarters with space, i.e. eighth notes, because there are eighth notes on the other voice, so you can't hold them longer. You're not going to... Yeah, you're not going to do that. So you're going to play the quarters not as quarters. But there are just a few spots in this movement where Bach actually does write slurs, and that gives us an opportunity to hold the other voice longer than we normally would. I didn't think of that until recently. Measure 126 and 128 to 129 are the first spots where that happens. So at first I was rolling off of my... making those quarters into short quarters, as I always do. As if, if it were separate bows, of course I'd have to. But then one day it occurred to me, wait a sec, those aren't separate bows, those are a rare slur. And so maybe Bach wants you to do something gooier in the other voice. which works really nicely here. Because then you get a nice 7th. And there's another fun place, 176. Sorry. And then this one, if you hold both voices, you have to start out with a 3 in order to make the fingering work. Then you have that nice juicy harmony. Just makes for a nice little spot that's really contrasting to most of the other stuff that happens. Phrasing the subject has always been something that people spend a lot of time thinking about. In fact, there's an old tradition of slurring, just measure 2. You can't keep it up because of all the polyphony, but now probably that's a bit silly. Bach didn't write slurs. That's a little presumptuous to add them on top of it willfully, but you do want to phrase it that way. Should you start up-bow with another up? There's something to be said for that. Then you're on an up-bow. Or you could start down bow. And then you could do another down bow. These days, I actually start down bow on most of the iterations of the subject. Don't do that with the G minor subject, because that's one gesture. Maybe that's why he wrote it in 4/4 and not 2/4. Da 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 dum bum bum. But this one, da dun da dun dun, it's still going away from that midpoint. Da da dum bum ba dum ba dum bum. But it's going away with 2 little gestures within it, not da 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 dum, but da dum ba dum bum. So therefore, doing all of that backwards just feels like too much backwardsing. So one way or another, it got to get to a down bow there. So do what you like, starting the subject down bow or starting it up bow with 2 ups. And of course, you don't always have to be consistent and do every single subject with the same bowing. More important to be consistent with the phrasing. Most, if not all, of the iterations of the subject and the upside down subject as well can be done with that same phrasing. And I actually finger that with a 5th, even though it's not so beautiful, as opposed to because that works, but sounds kind of weird. So the idea that you always had to use open strings whenever possible in the Baroque era, that's not that there are no exceptions to that rule. Here are slurs, but they have 8th notes under them. All right, so always da da dun dun da dun da dun dun, if at all possible. Now the counter subject. Always going to that dum bum 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 as the strongest note. But when it's turned upside down, the harmonic pattern actually shifts. So let's see where there's a good section of that. Straight measure 232. Here it's going back and forth between the upper voice and the lower voice for a while. Now it shifts. Instead of going down, it's going up. Starting in measure 2, what is that? 237, 8, 9, 240. So I actually don't feel like that's not the most important harmony. It's actually going further. So instead of wanting to be down bow there, I want to make sure I'm down bow by here. So I actually start the thing that goes on top of those chromatic stuff, those chromatic bits. I start it up bow for the upside down chromatic, for the one that rises. So I start these down bow, so I can have a down bow. These ones I start up bow, so I can go to this down bow and this down bow. And then I'm back to my subject, so I go back to a down bow. Down bow. Etc. Another thing to think about with the phrasing is making sure that you have 2-bar phrases with some of the 16th notes. We have these wonderful echoes, which are sometimes 1-bar echoes, from Bach starting at measure 45. Some of the rare Bach printed dynamics where he actually wrote dynamics for you. Of course, you want to start forte at 45 to set up the echo. Etc. Then we have the section at 94, which should really be 2 bars. And so it's like... Another one would be measure 206. All the way. Then it's gathering momentum, so 1-bar phrases. And then back. 106 is another spot with 2-bar phrases. And for that reason, I actually do backwards bowing for every other bar, as Bach wrote, rather than adding surs. Because then it gives it more of a... It's always good to think of the big picture, so these 2-bar phrases make it not feel too beaty or too regular as you're going along. There's one wrong note that people often play. In measure 183, for some reason, people have played note 6 as an A. I'm not sure why. It's clearly a G in the manuscript, and since it does work to be a G, you should do it as a G. Maybe because the next bar has an A, G, but actually that makes it the notes rising and then falling, which has more symmetry. That I think is a nicer note shape to that line with the original G in measure 183. Now, there is a coda in this movement. It doesn't come after a resolution, but really the whole section starting at 262 is a big coda. Last bit. Right, and then we've got our separate notes. That's kind of like the organ did a big chord, and then there's like one, your right hand on one of the keyboards, and then your big organ chords. Now this is the only time in all of the minor key movements of all of the sonatas and partitas where Bach ends with a major key chord. Not what you would expect. But look at the second voice. C natural, B, D, C sharp. That is B-A-C-H. B in German was and is B flat, and H is B natural. So Bach's last name, B-A-C-H. So that set of pitches is his little signature. So he sneakily hides it in the end of this fugue, except obviously a whole step up from the actual B-A-C-H. Is that an accident? I think not. So those are some of my thoughts about the A minor fugue. Thank you for watching RBP on JSB. I'm Rachel Barton Pine.